Hi, this video is the second video for Lecture 4. In this video, I will explain inflation rate and real rate of return. In previous problems and slides, we talked about net present value and investment project. For an investment project, if the net present value is high, we say it is a good investment project. Alternatively, we can use the rate of investment return to measure whether a project is good or bad. For example, if you bought Zoom stock last year and you sold Zoom stock last month, if the market price of Zoom stock went up during the past year, then you have some market price gain. And if Zoom paid you some dividend, then you have a dividend income. Now you use the market price gain of Zoom stock and the dividend from Zoom stock over the initial purchasing price of Zoom stock. You can calculate the rate of return of holding Zoom stock in the past 1 year. You can also calculate the rate of return in holding government bond. When you hold government bond, the market price of bond will create gains and losses, and the coupon or the interest paid by the government bond will become your investment income. However, we calculate this rate of return with this amount of dollar. Then we have this fundamental question. We don't know the value of dollar. In other words, we don't know how many bottles of Coca-Cola you can buy with $1 for 2020. And in 2030, we don't know how much you can buy with $1. If we have concerns about how many goods and services we can buy with $1, we say we have concerns over the prices of goods and services. And we use the average price of goods and services to evaluate this inflation. We call it consumer price index. If the inflation rate is high, and if the inflation rate exceeds the nominal rate of return, then the purchasing power of your investment is actually low. And we call this rate of return adjusted for inflation as the real rate of return. Here is the equation in calculating the real rate of return. We use 1 plus nominal rate of return over 1 plus inflation rate to calculate the real rate of return. For example, if the nominal rate of return is 10% and inflation rate is 2.5%, then the real rate of return is 7.32%. It is less attractive than 10%. If we were in 1980s, the inflation rate is high, what will occur? So if the nominal rate of return is 10%, the inflation rate is as high as 12%. Now the real rate of return is negative 1.78%. After we have this concern about inflation rate, we have another concern. We don't know the inflation rate for the next year. Maybe the inflation rate is as high as 10% or as low as 2%. How to solve this kind of problems? Well, we use the expected inflation rate to evaluate the real rate of return. We say it is exposed real rate of return if we use the realized inflation rate. We say it is ex ante expected return if we use the expected inflation rate in calculating the real rate of return. For this course, most of the time, we are dealing with problems related with ex ante returns. Let's have a close look at the inflation rate for United States over the past 100 years. So in this graph, we can see that the inflation rate changed over time. It was high in in 1914, and during the Great Recession, the inflation rate is negative. We say it is deflation. In 1980s, we have high inflation rate. The inflation rate was as high as 10%. In recent years, the inflation rate is relatively mild. So we rarely we rarely witness inflation rate surpassed 5%. Can the inflation rate affect the required interest rate? Well, we have a simplified model in thinking about required interest rate. Given this nominal interest rate, we can decompose it into the expected inflation rate and required rate of return. For most of the time, inflation rate could move with its nominal interest rate, but they are not identical perfectly. For example, in early 1980s, inflation rate was as low as 3%, but the nominal interest rate was as high as 10%. So the real rate of return at that time is around 8%. But in recent years, the inflation rate surpassed the nominal interest rate. So we have a negative real rate of return. It is a big concern for policy designers and also for academic researchers and also for professional investors. I hope this course will be helpful for you to think about this great trend of interest rate and inflation rate. Thanks.